have a problem. So for today's tutorial, I've got two different clips in my timeline. Each one will demonstrate a different scenario when you would want to use this technique to create that golden hour look. So in this first clip here with the dog, this is the type of situation where maybe you have an overcast day and all of the lighting is very flat. Or in my situation here, I had already missed golden hour. The sun was very low and was being blocked by the house, so I was completely in the shade. Again, very flat lighting, similar situation to if you were shooting in a cloudy environment. This can actually work in our favor because when the lighting is flat, we have more dynamic range and it makes it easier to color grade and edit our footage. But in our next clip, we have what is known as high noon, which is essentially very bright daylight when the sun is high right in the middle of the day. As you can see, the shadows are very harsh and the contrast is very harsh. We don't have much dynamic range because the sky is totally blown out. So this is definitely another situation where maybe you want to warm up that footage and give it that golden hour look. Now, I'm sure there's a handful of you out there that think this is going to be as easy as slapping on a LUT or just warming up the footage with a temperature slider. And that is actually not the case because the goal here is to emulate golden hour, not just to make our footage look orange. So starting off with this first clip, I'm going to be adding Color Finale Pro, which is a plugin. It's a great color grading tool, but if you don't have it, don't worry, because if you're on an updated version of Final Cut, the built-in color grading tools will work exactly the same. I'm just used to Color Finale, so that's what I'll be using. So 9 times out of 10 when I'm making an edit, the first thing I'll do is I'll open the controls for Color Finale, I'll go to the lookup tables and I will add a LUT from my Vintage Look LUT pack, and my favorite LUT lately has been Vista Cruiser, so let's go ahead and apply that to this clip. And you'll notice that this looks nothing like golden hour. It does look good, but it resembles The Walking Dead. It's very cool and blue looking, a little dark for my liking, and just doesn't give off that happy golden hour vibe that we're after. So in this situation, what a lot of us might do is just warm up the footage using a temperature slider and be done with it. But instead, what we're going to do is use color wheels so that we can individually isolate our lift, gamma, and gain, which is our shadows, midtones, and highlights respectively. That way we can maintain color contrast, warm up certain parts of our clip without damaging skin tones, and making sure that we're only warming up the parts of the clip that we intend to. That being said, let's start off with the gain color wheel. The majority of our white balance is dominated in the highlights, so that's why we're going to be using the gain channel to push in those warm tones. So I'm just going to push up here into the yellowish, orange, reddish area, play around with it until I'm happy with how it looks. And you can also use this slider as well to adjust our exposure. So I'm going to raise it just a bit, and I feel like that looks pretty good. So now we're gonna focus on the midtones, and I'm going to adjust the gamma color wheel, and I'm gonna push more into this greenish yellow area. And again, just playing around with it until we're happy with how it looks. And I think I actually want to bring down the exposure in the midtones slightly to bring back some contrast. So now with the shadows, we're going to use our lift color wheel, and this time we're actually going to do a very minor adjustment in the opposite direction as before to somewhat counteract the warmness that we've introduced into the shadows. So what we've done so far is we've added the Vista Cruiser LUT, which of course didn't have that golden hour look we were going for, and this is just because of the way the footage was shot again, which is why we're doing this tutorial. So what we did was we added this color wheels layer to warm up that footage, and now it's starting to resemble that golden hour look that we're after. So if you wanted to, you could actually leave it like this and move on to the next step, but I really want to dial in that golden hour look. So what I'm going to be doing is adding a vectors layer by clicking this button right here and turning that down to only 70% opacity. Within the green channel, I'm going to take the hue slider and push it all the way up to 1, and then I'm going to do the opposite in the yellow channel and bring it all the way down to -1, and then I'm going to make a new vectors layer, turn that down to 70% opacity. I'm going to turn up the hue and the saturation all the way up to 1 in the green channel, and then I'm going to turn up the hue in the yellow channel just a bit. I think right around here looks pretty good. Turn up the saturation all the way, and then in the red channel, I'm also going to turn the saturation all the way up as well. So just to reiterate what we did there, in that first vectors layer we made, we isolated the grass and made it really green so that it would be easier to manipulate, and that's exactly what we did in the next vectors layer. We made it look like the sun was hitting that grass, making it have that goldish yellowish tint on the green, and in the process of doing that, we've also warmed up the rest of the clip and given it more of a reddish tint, as if the sun were really low. So that is it for the color grade, and if we turn it off and turn it back on, you can see what a difference that has actually made. Here is what the clip looked like if we just added the LUT, and here it is after all of our corrections. But now let's move on to that second step, which is what really separates a color graded clip from a clip that looks like it was actually shot during golden hour, and that is to add a lens flare. In Final Cut, I have this plugin called M-Flare 2. It's pretty expensive, so I'm going to show you another way to do this afterward. But just to give you an idea of how this works, what I like to do is go through these flares and see the one that I think will suit the clip the best. In this case, we want that golden hour look, so I'm going to take the Evening Sunshine lens flare, drag that on, and I'm going to adjust the position of the lens flare to where I want it. And what's cool about M-Flare 2 is that it has a built-in motion tracker so that you can track these lens flares automatically without doing keyframing. So that's what I'm going to do right now. All I do is I click this tracker button and then I hit track. And what it is doing right now is tracking the clip forward from where my playhead is on the timeline. And once that is done, I'm going to check off this box that says reverse, and I'm going to track it in the opposite direction to make sure that the whole clip is tracked. That way, if we do have motion in our clip, then the lens flare will track it and it will look as realistic as possible. So that is it for this clip. I actually think it looks unbelievable compared to how we started. And here is the original clip, followed by the color graded clip. And now here it is with the color grade and the lens flare. Now some of you might have already looked up the M-Flare 2 plugin and found out that it costs $150, which is definitely on the pricey side, so you're probably wondering how can you pull off this look for free. And that's exactly what I will be showing you on our next clip, which is of course the daylight clip where the sun is very high, very contrasty, the sky is blown out. So rather than going through that whole color grading process all over again, to save you guys some time, I've already done it. So of course, here is that Vista Cruiser LUT that I was talking about. We'll turn that on, and this does not look like golden hour, which is why we added the color wheels. Turn that on, now we're looking a little bit more warm. And lastly, with this vectors layer, we're making those pink tones look a little bit more orangish and gold. So now moving on to the lens flare portion of this technique, here we have a folder I've created with 5 different lens flares, each with a unique look. So instead of paying $150 for M-Flare 2, you can pay $2 and get this pack of 5 flares. I've also put one of them up for free, but like I said, $2 gets you all 5. So all you have to do is take one of them and drag it over top of your clip. And what's cool about these is that you can manipulate them however you want, whether that's the brightness or the saturation or even the orientation. So in this case, I'm actually going to flip it around because in this clip, the sun is on the other side and it will just look more realistic that way. And all you have to do is go to the blend mode and change it to soft light. So there is the clip without the lens flare, and here it is with it turned on. Here is the original clip before any adjustments, and here it is with the color grade. And here it is with the lens flare.